Hello, and welcome back to Ask a Newsworker. Media bias. We're going to talk about media bias in this video. Is the media biased? I get this question a lot from people I've met over the years. When I tell them I'm a media worker, they say, so is the media biased? I've detected some bias. I think it is. What do you think? Do I think the media is biased? Yes. The media is definitely biased. The media is biased in the sense that the media decides what it will cover. The news business is a business made up of human beings who collectively and individually decide what they are going to write about and what they are going to publish. So in that sense, it's biased. It's subjective and biased in the sense that news workers like myself, editors, journalists, publishers, decide every day what they're going to write and talk about. There's many different things you could write and talk about in the world, and different media outlets prioritize different things. So there is bias in the sense that every media outlet decides what they're going to talk about, what they're going to write about, what they're going to publish about. There's bias in that sense. Is there bias in the sense that the media would rather talk about some things rather than other things? Yes, because once again, the media is made up of human beings like you, presumably a human being watching this, like me. Human beings have preferences, have perspectives, have things they lean into versus other things. And humans will therefore prioritize the things that matter most to them over other things. So yes, there is media bias in the sense that media outlets and organizations collectively and individually decide what they think is most interesting out of everything that's happening in the world, and they choose to do news stories about that. You may have noticed, as I said in another video, that there are many situations where something is maybe interesting to you or compelling to you or strange to you, but it's not in the news. There's no news items, or maybe there's a few, but it's not that much. Why is that? Well, it's because the media has a bias against your interest, has a bias against your story. It's not fair. It's not right, maybe. You could start a YouTube channel like this and try to get attention to it that way, or you could become an activist or whatever the cause or issue is. But the media will only publish what they think is worthwhile, relevant, interesting, controversial, likely to attract attention, likely to generate discussion. They are biased in that sense. Are there political biases? Do some media outlets prefer to cater to some political persuasions versus others? Yes, absolutely. That's probably not controversial in the slightest. I think everybody knows that. It's not outwardly acknowledged, but all you have to do is observe a series of different media outlets and pay attention to what they pay attention to themselves, what they'll report on, what they'll not report on. You may notice that certain outlets will very consistently report on certain issues, certain trends, certain topics, while others they avoid entirely. And then other outlets cover the ones that are avoided by the other one, and that outlet avoids the ones that the first outlet is really into. Hope that wasn't too confusing, but you know what I mean. Outlets collectively and individually decide what they think is worth covering, and no one outlet covers everything, in my experience. So how can you sort of get the best understanding of what might really be going on in the world? Because remember that media comes from medium. It's the layer between you and the world at large. The media tells you about things that's happening in the world at large that you might not be close to, that you might not be aware of. How do you get a good understanding of what's going on in the world? Through the media. I would say don't just stick to one outlet. I would say if you're only paying attention to one media outlet exclusively, you're almost certainly not getting the full picture of what's really going on in the world. And even if you pay attention to several, across several languages, several geographies, jurisdictions, whichever, even then you may not still have a very clear idea of what's going on. And one point that I will be making in other videos is that it's very hard to know in general what's going on in the world around us, even though we have a very sophisticated and developed media system. I think it's important to not mistake what you see and hear and read through the media with reality, because once again, It's an interpretation of reality. The media surveys reality like we all do as people, and then decides, I would like to make this a news item versus that. I'd like to highlight this particular example versus that. So yes, media bias is real. It does exist. It will depend on the organization. But at a very fundamental level, media bias is really just human beings deciding that some stuff is worth talking about more than other stuff. And that's true of everybody. You know, you go to a party and some people only want to talk about baseball. Some people want to talk about cooking and wine tours, and other people don't want to talk about any of that. Everybody has their biases, their inclinations, and the media is no exception, because once again, the media is comprised of human beings. It is a human creation. It's not weather. It's not clouds and rain and snow. It's a human creation. It is a human enterprise, a human created distribution method for information. That's ultimately what it is, and I'll be returning to this point in other videos. But for the sake of this video, I, as a news worker, will confirm to you, the viewer, that yes, media bias exists. It's not always nefarious. It's not always sinister, as some people would point out. It's just really people choosing to write and talk about some stuff versus other stuff. And that is a bias unto itself. So we'll get into it more in future videos. But yes, media bias is real. I can confirm that. Thanks for watching.